I want you to picture something for a second. You're standing in a hallway, and down at the very end of that hall, there's a door that you keep locked. You have the key in your pocket, but you never, ever use it. You know exactly what's behind that door. It's every embarrassing moment, every cruel thought you've ever had, every fear that wakes you up at 3 in the morning.
It's the stuff we pretend doesn't exist. The basement of the house, so to speak, the attic.
Right. And we spend so much energy leaning against that door, making sure it stays shut. We stack psychological furniture in front of it. But the research we're diving into today asks a pretty terrifying question. What if the thing you're hiding behind that door isn't a monster?
What if it's the opposite?
What if it's the rest of you?
The missing piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. Imagine for a second that every single fear you have, every moment of crippling self-doubt, isn't actually an obstacle. What if it's a map?
A guide.
Today, we are doing a deep dive into the shadow. And look, I know the shadow sounds like a villain in a cheap fantasy novel.
It does sound dramatic, doesn't it? It evokes images of ghosts or, dark alleys.
But the source material we have today is heavy. We've got excerpts from Carl Jung's Man and His Symbols. We've got analysis of his famous, really bitter split with Sigmund Freud, and some modern psychological takes on why being positive all the time might actually be ruining your life.
It's funny you mention ruining your life because Jung's central argument here is that you can't actually be a full human being if you're only willing to look at the good parts here. He has this concept of individuation.
That's the big technical term for today, individuation.
It is, and it sounds complicated, but think of it as undividing yourself. We spend our lives split in half the part we show the world and the part we hide. Jung is saying, stop the split, become whole.
So the goal isn't to fix you.
No, because you aren't broken, you're just fragmented.
That is a massive distinction. We aren't trying to excise a tumor here. We are trying to reattach a limb.
Precisely. The mission of this deep dive is to explore Jung's theory that wholeness comes from facing the darkness, not from running from it.
I have to say, going through this material, one analogy really, really stuck with me. It's the beach ball analogy. We'll get there in a bit, but it perfectly explains why trying to be positive and nice all the time acts like a psychological pressure cooker.
Oh, it's the best one. It's a question of physics, really, psychologically speaking. But this entire conversation is about a journey toward becoming who you truly are, rather than who you think you should be.
So let's unpack this. To understand the shadow and why this was such a radical idea, we have to look at the guy who came up with it, Carl Jung. Because looking at the history here, he wasn't just some armchair philosopher.
Oh, far from it. Carl Gustav Jung was born in Switzerland in 1875. He was this deeply introspective kid, even as a child, fascinated by philosophy, spirituality, mythology, and all the weird, darker corners of the human experience.
And you can't really talk about him without talking about Sigmund Freud.
You really can't. To understand his contribution, you have to understand his relationship with Freud.
The grandfather of psychoanalysis.
Right. And the thing to understand about Jung is that he was the crown prince.
Crown prince of what?
Of the entire psychoanalytic movement. Freud literally handpicked Jung to take over his empire. They were incredibly close.
Like a father and son.
Almost exactly. The sources say their first meeting lasted for 13 hours straight. They just talked and talked. They analyzed each other's dreams. They traveled to America together to give lectures. Freud saw Jung as the future of his entire legacy.
So what happened? Because they famously hated each other by the end. It wasn't just a drift. It was a nasty breakup.
It was a massive falling out around 1912. And it essentially came down to how they viewed the human engine, what makes us tick. Freud had a very, very specific lens.
Libido.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He believed that the primary drive behind human behavior, everything from why you build bridges to why you love your mother, was sexuality, repressed sexual energy, libido.
That's the classic Freud playbook. Everything is about sex or your relationship with your parents.
Correct. And for a while, Jung went along with it. He was Freud's protege. But eventually, he looked at the human experience, at mythology, at religion, at his own patience, and he said, wait a minute, this is too simple. It's too reductive.
So he felt like we were more than just our biological urges.
He felt the human psyche was infinitely more complex. He believed we are influenced by spiritual needs, by cultural history, by a deep innate drive for meaning. It wasn't just about sex.
So Freud is looking at the plumbing, and Jung is looking at the architecture of the soul.
That is a fantastic way to put it. Jung essentially told Freud, I think you're wrong about the cornerstone of your entire theory. And Freud, well, Freud did not take it well.
I can't imagine.
He was dogmatic. He viewed any dissent as a personal betrayal. So they split. The letters they wrote to each other at the end are just dripping with animosity. It was brutal.
And this wasn't just a professional disagreement. The sources say Jung went into a serious tailspin after this, a breakdown.
He did. He called it his confrontation with the unconscious. For several years, he was on the verge of what most would call psychosis. He was seeing visions, hearing voices, having these intense mythological dreams.
Most people would have checked themselves into an institution.
The lesser mind might have.
Yeah.
But Jung treated it as a research project. He said, okay, if I'm going mad, I'm going to dive into my own madness to see what's there. He documented everything.
He didn't run from the breakdown. He took notes.
He took notes. And that is where his most profound ideas, including the concept of the shadow, really come from. He found them in the darkness.
That's incredible. So this divergence led him to propose some of his really revolutionary ideas, the biggest one being the collective unconscious.
Right. So Freud thought about the personal unconscious, your specific repressed memories, your childhood traumas. Jung said, yes, that exists, but there is also a deeper layer, a layer shared by all human beings across all time and all cultures.
Kind of psychological inheritance.
Exactly. A reservoir of experiences and memories inherited from our ancestors. It's why a baby knows to fear snakes without ever having seen one. It's why different cultures, separated by thousands of miles, have such similar myths and symbols.
This is where we get the concept of archetypes, right? These are like universal characters that live in our heads.
Precisely. Think of them as blueprints for human experience. No matter where you are born or what culture you are in, you instinctively understand the archetype of the mother, the nurturer, or the hero, the one who overcomes obstacles, or the wise old man.
And the archetype we are focusing on today, the shadow.
The shadow,
Yeah.
the hidden brother or sister.
And just to establish the credibility here, the sources we're pulling from highlight some of his heavy-hitting works. Man and His Symbols, Modern Man in Search of a Soul, The Psychology of the Unconscious. This guy wrote the book, literally multiple books on the stuff going on in our heads that we don't even know about.
He was prolific. But what I love about Jung's core philosophy, and it's mentioned in the source material, is his stance on morality. It's so different from how we usually think.
How so?
Jung didn't aspire to be a good man. He aspired to be a whole man.
That is such a distinction. Good implies following the rules, cutting parts of yourself off to fit in. Whole implies something else entirely.
It changes everything. He wrote, as far as we could discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light of meaning in the darkness of mere being. He wasn't interested in perfection. He was interested in integration.
Okay, so let's get into the meat of it. Let's define the shadow. We keep saying the term. If we strip away the mysticism, what are we actually talking about? Is it just evil? My inner villain?
That's the biggest misconception, and it's where most people get tripped up. In the source material, Jung defines the shadow as simply the unconscious. It's the dark side of the ego.
But dark doesn't mean bad.
Exactly. It means obscured, like the dark side of the moon. It's just the side you can't see from your current position. It is the repository for everything we have repressed. It's the desires, the undeveloped potential, the unfulfilled aspirations, and all the traits we've deemed unacceptable.
So how does it get there? I assume we aren't born with a shadow already packed full of stuff.
Well, we are born whole. Think about a toddler. A toddler is a complete savage, in the best way.
Yes, they are.
They scream when they're mad. They laugh hysterically when they're happy.
Yeah.
They explore everything. They are 100% themselves. They don't judge their own behavior as good or bad. It just is.
And then parenting happens. School happens.
Society happens. Culture happens. Your parents say, don't scream, that's bad. Don't be selfish, share your toys. Boys don't cry. Good girls shouldn't be too loud or bossy. We learn very, very quickly that to be loved, to be accepted, and to be safe, we have to be certain things and not others.
So the toddler takes the part of themselves that wants to scream, or the part that is greedy, or the part that is sad, and they say, okay, this part is dangerous. This part makes mommy and daddy mad. I need to get rid of it.
Precisely.
Mm.
But, and this is the key, it's like a law of psychological physics. You can't destroy energy. You can only move it.
So you split yourself.
You create a persona. That's a Jungian term for the mask you wear to be liked, the conscious role you play for the world, the good student, the responsible employee, the caring friend, and everything that doesn't fit that persona.
It gets shoved into the basement.
It gets relegated to the shadow. It becomes the hidden, unlived, and unconscious part of you.
And this is where that beach ball analogy comes in, which I just love. The source describes it like this. Trying to hide your shadow is like trying to hold a fully inflated beach ball underwater.
It's the best way to visualize repression.
Yeah.
It makes it so tangible.
So imagine you're in a swimming pool. You have this massive, brightly colored, inflated beach ball. That ball represents your anger, your jealousy, your laziness, your selfishness, all this stuff you don't like. You're trying to hold it underwater so no one sees it.
And you can do it for a while.
Yeah, you can stand there in the pool smiling, talking to people, all while holding that ball down. But look at the effort involved.
Your muscles are tense, your back is aching, you're completely distracted. You can't really enjoy the swim or the conversation because 90% of your focus is on keeping that damn ball submerged.
Yeah.
It takes constant draining energy.
And the moment you get tired or distracted or a wave of stress hits you,
The ball doesn't just float up gently. It rockets out of the water, violently.
usually smacking you right in the face.
Or smacking the person standing next to you, which is often what happens.
The more force you use to hold it down, the more violently it resurfaces. This is why the nicest people, the ones who repress everything because they want to be seen as perfect, sometimes have the most terrifying, out-of-nowhere explosions of rage.
They've been holding the beach ball down with maximum force for years, and eventually their arms just give out.
But here's the part that really surprised me in the reading. You mentioned the shadow isn't just bad stuff. The text talks about something called the golden shadow. What is that?
This is a fascinating and often overlooked part of the theory. The shadow is simply what is unconscious. It isn't just your inner axe murderer, it's anything you've disowned. So imagine you grew up in a family where being loud or creative or ambitious was frowned upon. Maybe you were told to be quiet, practical, and humble. Don't get too big for your britches.
Okay, so if I had a natural talent for leadership or a desire to be on stage or to be an artist,
You would have been told that those things are arrogant or impractical or attention-seeking. So, to survive in that family system, to be loved, you shove your creativity and your leadership skills and your confidence right into the shadow along with the anger and selfishness.
wow, so you could be walking around feeling unfulfilled, feeling small, not realizing you have this massive reservoir of talent or passion locked away in the basement just because you thought it was wrong when you were 6 years old.
That is so often the case. A person who suppresses their creativity because it is impractical relegates that talent to the shadow. You might feel a pang of envy when you see a successful artist, not realizing that envy is your own buried talent screaming to be let out.
So the shadow holds the seeds of our greatest strengths, not just our weaknesses. It's the unlived life.
It is the unlived life, both the good and the bad. It's just
Well,
you.
Okay, so we have this invisible bag of rejected traits dragging behind us. Since it's unconscious, by definition, we don't know it's there. So how do we spot it? How does the shadow actually show up in real life?
Jung gave us a very practical, if humbling, tool for this: projection.
Ah, yes.
He famously said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves.
This is the mirror effect. And I have to be honest, reading this section made me really defensive. It's the idea that when I'm pointing a finger at someone, 3 fingers are pointing back at me.
It's deeply uncomfortable, but it's an incredibly reliable diagnostic tool. Let's look at a practical example from our notes. Let's talk about a hypothetical colleague. Let's call him Bob.
We all have a Bob.
We all have a Bob. So imagine you have a colleague named Bob. And Bob is incredibly arrogant, overconfident. He takes up all the air in the room. He interrupts people. He thinks his ideas are pure gold. And you don't just find him annoying, you loathe him. You can't stand being in a meeting with him. Your blood pressure spikes the second he walks in the door.
I can feel that reaction just thinking about a hypothetical Bob.
Right. Now, Jung would say, why is the reaction so strong? Why the intense emotion? If it's just a neutral observation, Bob is loud, that's fine. Some people are loud. But if it's a powerful emotional trigger, if you go home and complain about Bob for an hour, that is a clue.
A clue to what?
It might mean that you have suppressed your own desire for the spotlight, or your own confidence, or your own ambition.
Whoa, so I hate Bob's confidence because I've shoved my own confidence into the shadow.
Or perhaps you have a know-it-all inside you that you're frantically trying to keep underwater. You see Bob letting his beach ball fly free, and your shadow recognizes a kindred spirit. It's a resonance. You hate it in him because you've been taught to hate it in yourself.
That is the judgment trap. The source mentions that people who harshly judge selfishness are often repressing their own selfish thoughts, or people who are intolerant of impatience are battling their own deep-seated impatience.
It's a classic defense mechanism. We attack in others what we fear in ourselves. If I can label Bob as arrogant, I don't have to deal with my own insecurity about being invisible or my own secret desire to dominate the room.
It's so much easier to see the splinter in someone else's eye.
Then the log in our own, yes. Another huge sign the sources mention is emotional outbursts. We touched on this with the beach ball. It's when your reaction is totally, completely disproportionate to the event. Yes.
Yeah.
If you drop a coffee mug and it shatters and you suddenly feel a rage so intense you want to scream and punch a wall, that isn't about the mug. That is the shadow taking over. It's accumulated, repressed energy that has finally found a tiny crack to escape through.
In dreams, we can't talk about Jung without talking about dreams. He saw them as the royal road to the unconscious.
Absolutely. Dreams are the direct line. When your conscious defenses are down at night, the shadow comes out to play. The shadow often appears in dreams as a figure of the same gender as the dreamer.
So if I'm a man, my shadow in a dream might be a dark, sinister, or perhaps a pathetic and weak male figure.
Exactly. And if you're a woman, a female figure. And this dream figure usually behaves in ways your conscious self would never, ever dare.
So if I'm a strict rule follower in real life, my shadow in a dream might be a criminal or a wild, chaotic rebel.
Precisely. It's the psyche's attempt to create balance. It's compensating for the one-sidedness of your conscious life. It's trying to show you the part of yourself you're ignoring. It's waving at you from the other side of the door.
Okay, so we've defined it, and we know how to spot it, but why should we care? I mean, ignorance is bliss, right? Why go digging around in the dark basement? What is the actual cost of just leaving the shadow alone?
Jung had a very famous, very chilling quote about this. He said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate."
Ooh, that is heavy. You will call it fate.
It means that if you don't look at this stuff, you are running on autopilot.
Yeah.
You are a puppet, and your shadow is pulling the strings. You think you're making choices, but your unconscious patterns, your shadow, are making them for you.
So you end up dating the same type of person over and over, even though it never works out?
Yes.
Mm.
Or you sabotage jobs in the exact same way every time. You get into the same arguments with your family. You think it's bad luck, or that's just how the world is, or it's fate. Jung says, no, that's you. That's the part of you that you won't look at, running the show from behind the curtain.
So practically speaking, what are the consequences of this?
Well, first and foremost is internal conflict. You feel like a fraud. You feel inauthentic because, on some level, you're only showing the mask, the persona. You live with a constant, low-grade sense of being fragmented.
And relationships. I imagine projecting your garbage onto your partner isn't great for romance.
It's disastrous. It's probably the #1 relationship killer. Relationships are strained to the breaking point by projection. If you don't own your own anger, you will see your partner as constantly angry and attacking you. If you don't own your own neediness, you'll see them as suffocating. You attack in them what you can't face in yourself.
But beyond that, there's a physical and mental toll.
A huge one. The source material is clear on this. Ignoring the shadow can lead directly to burnout, anxiety, depression, or even physical illness.
Because of the energy it takes to keep that beach ball under the water.
Precisely. It is profoundly exhausting to be anyone other than who you truly are. The body keeps the score. That chronic tension in your shoulders, those headaches, that's the effort of repression manifesting physically.
The sources bring up nice guy-girl syndrome here. This seems to be a very common, very modern manifestation of a repressed shadow.
It is. It's the person who is pathologically agreeable. They repress all their anger, all their selfish needs, all their boundaries, because they have a core belief that they must be nice to be loved.
And what happens to them?
They often end up deeply resentful. They become passive-aggressive because the anger has to leak out somehow, or they suffer from psychosomatic issues. Or one day they just snap. Repression gives the trait more power, not less. The dark side grows denser and more potent the more it is ignored. You become brittle.
Okay, you've convinced me. Leaving the beach ball underwater is a bad, bad plan. So, what is the solution? How do we fix this? Or, I guess Jung wouldn't say fix.
Right, not fix. Integrate. This is the heart of shadow work. It's not about eliminating the dark side. You can't. You need it. It's about integrating it so it works for you, not against you.
So step 1 in the sources is radical self-honesty.
This is the hardest step, and it's non-negotiable. You have to be willing to admit the ugly feelings. You have to be able to look in the mirror and say, without flinching, yes, I am jealous. Yes, I am judgmental. Yes, I have a cruel streak.
The analogy here is cleaning a cluttered room. You can't start cleaning the mess until you turn on the lights and admit the mess exists.
And you have to do it without judgment. That's the really tricky part. You aren't saying, I'm jealous and therefore I'm a terrible person. You are saying, I am feeling jealousy. Interesting. Why? What is this feeling trying to tell me?
You have to become a curious observer of your own darkness. Step 2 is where it gets a little more esoteric, maybe. Dialogue with the shadow. The notes mention a technique Jung developed called active imagination. Are we talking about hearing voices?
Not quite. Think of it as a lucid dream while you're awake. You can do this with a journal. It's incredibly powerful. You literally write a script. You treat the shadow or a particular feeling as a separate entity.
Can you walk me through that? What does that actually look like on the page?
Okay, so let's go back to Bob. You feel that white-hot rage bubbling up because Bob interrupted you in the meeting again.
Yeah.
Later that day, you sit down with a journal, you write, me. Why are you so angry about what Bob did? And this is the weird part, you let the anger answer. You write down whatever comes to mind without filtering it.
So the answer might be something like, anger, because he makes me look weak and stupid in front of everyone.
Right. Then you write back, me. Why are you so afraid of looking weak? And the shadow, the anger, might reply, because if I'm weak, I'll get hurt. I'll be abandoned, just like I was when I was 7 and no one stood up for me. And suddenly, you aren't fighting Bob anymore. You're having a conversation with a scared 7-year-old part of yourself.
Wow, so the shadow isn't actually trying to hurt you.
No. That is the single biggest takeaway from this whole deep dive. The shadow is almost always trying to protect you. It's just using old, outdated, often destructive software. It's trying to protect the fragile ego. Your anger is trying to protect you from being walked all over. Your jealousy is trying to point you toward what your soul really wants.
Which leads right into step 3, stop living reactively.
Once you start to understand the motives of your shadow, you can stop being its puppet. Instead of waiting for life to trigger you, you challenge yourself. You ask the hard questions. What do I really believe? What do I really want, separate from what I've been told to want? When you stop reacting to your shadow triggers, you can start acting from your true, whole self.
And step 4 is my favorite, recontextualizing bad traits. This is where we turn the lead into psychological gold.
This is the alchemy of the psyche. Let's take anger. Repressed anger is toxic. It's bitterness, it's resentment. But integrated anger, that becomes advocacy. That becomes healthy boundary setting. That becomes the fuel for social change. You can't stand up for justice if you can't access your aggression in a conscious way.
What about envy? That one feels purely negative.
Not at all. Envy is a roadmap. It's a signpost. If you are deeply envious of someone, they have something you want. Instead of hating them for it, which is the projection, you can use the envy to identify your own desire. Oh, I'm jealous of their artistic freedom. That means I want more creativity in my life. It's valuable information.
And laziness.
Laziness is often a signal for needed rest in a culture that worships burnout. Or it can be a rebellion against a life path that doesn't actually fit you. It's a check engine light. It's your soul saying, I don't want to do this anymore because this isn't me.
So we aren't exercising demons, we're retraining them, we're giving them new jobs on the team.
Exactly. We are extending the team to include everyone who is locked in the basement.
Now, Jung didn't exist in a vacuum. The sources connect his ideas to some other really big philosophical thinkers. Let's just zoom out for a second to the bigger picture.
Yeah, you can't talk about facing the darkness without talking about Friedrich Nietzsche. He had a massive influence on this whole line of thinking.
The famous quote, "He who fights with monsters
should be careful, lest he thereby become a monster. And when you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you."
I've always heard that as a warning, like, don't look, run away.
It is a warning, but in the Jungian context, it's a warning about the danger of confrontation without integration. If you face the abyss, the unconscious, without a strong sense of self, without consciousness, you can be consumed by it. But Nietzsche also believed in the Übermensch, or the Overman, someone who has transcended mere conformity. You have to face the abyss to transcend it. You can't go around it.
And there's a connection to Kierkegaard too, right? The existentialist.
Yeah. Yes, very much so. Kierkegaard was all about the pursuit of authentic selfhood versus the safety of conformity. The persona Jung talks about is basically what Kierkegaard called living in the crowd, losing yourself in what everyone else thinks and does. Shadow work is the path back to the individual. It's the path out of the crowd.
And of course, Eastern philosophy. Jung was huge on this. He had a whole library of Eastern texts.
Oh, absolutely. The Taoist concept of yin and yang is pure shadow integration. You cannot have the light without the dark. They are complementary, necessary forces that create a whole. Or look at Buddhism's middle way. It's all about the balance of opposites. If you are 100% yang, all light, all action, all logical, you are dangerously out of balance. You need the yin, the shadow, the rest, the receptive, the unknown.
There is also this really cool idea about the collective unconscious in a social sense. The source says, individualization contributes to the collective unconscious. What does that mean for us?
This is the so what for the world. This answers the question, is this just selfish navel-gazing? And Jung's answer is an emphatic no. When you heal your own shadow, when you integrate your own darkness, you stop projecting your fears and hatreds onto society.
You stop looking for scapegoats.
Exactly. You stop hating those people over there because you've dealt with the bad person inside you. Jung believed that if enough individuals did this work, it would change the collective destiny of humanity.
So if everyone dealt with their own shadow, we wouldn't need enemies.
We wouldn't need wars to act out our collective shadows. We project our internal wars onto the external world. Peace starts inside.
That is profound. By working on myself, I'm actually helping clean up the neighborhood, psychologically speaking.
It is the only way to clean up the neighborhood.
Yeah.
You can't fix the world if you are projecting your own unexamined darkness all over it.
So, we've done the work, we've looked at the philosophy, now let's talk about action. Let's bring it home. There is a quote here that stopped me in my tracks. Where your fear is, there is your task.
It's a compass. That's the entire shift in mindset. We usually treat fear as a stop sign, a do not enter sign, a wall. Jung says it's a dig here sign. It's a flashing green light.
That is absolutely terrifying.
It is. But think about it. We often avoid action due to fear, but that fear indicates exactly where our growth lies. If you are terrified of public speaking, that is likely where your potential for leadership and influence is hiding. If you are afraid of intimacy, that is where your heart needs to grow to become whole.
So the shadow holds the map, and the fear highlights the route we need to take.
Beautifully put. And this brings us to the absolute necessity of action. Meaning is found in practice, not just in theory. You are what you do, not what you say you'll do.
The source gives the example of the aspiring author.
Right. The reactive person, the one ruled by the unconscious shadow, waits for inspiration to strike. They wait for the fear of failure to go away. They want to feel safe before they start writing. Of course, they never do.
Because you never feel safe.
Never. The active person, the one integrating the shadow, writes despite the fear of ejection. They feel the fear and they do it anyway. They use the fear as fuel. They say, I am afraid and I am writing anyway. That is courage.
And this touches on the necessity of sadness. The source says even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness.
Happiness, in the way we think of it, loses its meaning without sadness to balance it. It's contrast. You cannot appreciate the stars without the night sky. Jung argues that we shouldn't aim for happiness in the modern consumerist sense of constant pleasure. We should aim for meaning. And meaning always requires struggle. It requires depth. It requires the full spectrum of human emotion.
Turning wounds into wisdom. That's the phrase that sums it up.
Look at any great story, any mythology. Hercules didn't become a hero by sitting on the couch and having a nice, positive day. He had to face his own rage, his madness, his monsters. That's what forged him.
Or Luke Skywalker going into that cave on Dagobah.
A perfect Jungian metaphor. He goes into the cave, the unconscious, the place that is strong with the dark side. He fights a vision of Darth Vader. He cuts Vader's mask off, and whose face is underneath? His own face. He had to face the terrifying fact that the potential for evil was inside him, not just out there in the galaxy. That realization, that integration, is what made him a Jedi. If you don't know you have a sword, you can't control it. Shadow work is about finding the sword and putting it in your hand so you can choose how to use it.
And in real history, look at someone like Frida Kahlo.
She lived a life of immense physical pain. A broken spine, polio, countless surgeries. She could have tried to repress that, to paint pretty landscapes and pretend she was fine. Instead, what did she do?
She painted the pain.
She painted the blood, the steel corsets, the suffering. She integrated her shadow into her art. And that is why her work is so powerful and resonates decades later. She didn't hide the pain. She used it as raw material.
Or Martin Luther King Jr. He felt profound anger at injustice. He didn't repress it, and he didn't let it explode into mindless violence. He integrated it. He channeled it into a powerful, disciplined movement for change.
That is the ultimate goal for you, for the listener. Your struggles, your dark traits, the things you are most ashamed of, they are the raw material for your unique purpose. They are the fuel for your fire. Your purpose isn't found in your perfection. It's found in your struggle.
So what does this all mean for us today, right now? We've moved from fearing the shadow to hopefully understanding it as a guide. We've learned that the things we hide are actually the keys to becoming whole, that process of individuation.
It's a fundamental shift in perspective. Instead of seeing yourself as a project that needs to be fixed or purified, you see yourself as a mystery that needs to be explored. You stop trying to be the good boy or good girl and start trying to be the real you. All of you.
I want to leave our listener with a challenge, a final challenge from our sources.
It's simple, but it is not easy. Look within today, just once. The next time you get annoyed at someone, when you feel that spike of irritation or judgment at a politician on TV, a slow driver, your partner, pause. Just for a second, don't lash out, don't vent to a friend. Just stop and ask yourself, what is this telling me about myself?
What part of my beach ball just popped up?
Exactly. Catch the projection.
Yeah.
Own it, just for yourself. That single act is the first step toward freedom.
I love that. And I want to end with a final provocative thought, something to let simmer in your brain after you take your headphones off. The source says, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious.
And my favorite of all his quotes, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes.
Perfection is not the goal, wholeness is. So go find your darkness and turn on the light. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Until next time.